So the Philadelphia Eagles will begin training camp tomorrow, where we'll start to get our first real look at what this team might possibly become in 2024, and that's hopefully a much better version than what we saw in 2023, which ultimately culminated in one of the worst collapses we've ever seen from a team in NFL history. But as we prepare to enter training camp, there is one thing that is very different about the Eagles than this time last year that might just end up being the reason they succeed rather than fail this time around. And at the center of it all is head coach Nick Sirianni, with a recent report coming out detailing what exactly might have all went wrong last year. So let's break it all down and explain why things will be different this year. So we're going to talk about all that and more in this video today, and we won't waste any time. Let's get straight into it. So let's start off with arguably the Eagles' best player and leader in A.J. Brown, as the back-to-back All-Pro receiver recently just hosted his youth football camp on Friday.
Thank y'all for today. Thank y'all for coming. I want all the kids to give y'all parents, I want y'all to say thank you to your parents right now. 1, 2, 3, go. Yes. I just want to say thank you for today. Thank you for bringing your kids out, and it's going to be a wonderful event, and fly Eagles fly, let's go.
So you just love to see A.J. Brown having a positive impact in the community like this, and I think it honestly just shows you the type of person that A.J. is to always want to give back, whether it be like this or his foundation that he started not too long ago, and also just being the type of teammate and leader that he is for the Birds, even if the media doesn't always try and paint him in that positive light. And I think it's safe to say that the Eagles got a special player and person in A.J. Brown, and Philly is truly lucky to have him. And again, it was just so awesome to see him giving back to the community in this way, and it was also awesome to see some of the Eagles coaches, including head coach Nick Sirianni, there supporting him, which only backs the fact that the head coach and the team's #1 wide receiver seem to have a pretty good relationship. However, Sirianni's relationship with quarterback Jalen Hurts might be a little bit of a different story, with that relationship recently being described as, quote, a work in progress by Diana Russini of The Athletic, although she did make it clear that the relationship isn't necessarily bad, as she went in depth on the dynamic between the QB and head coach in a recent episode of the Scoop City podcast with former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel.
We've seen Jalen on the sideline with Nick, and it never looked like they were going at one another, but you could tell there was definitely a difference in personality. So the way I would describe it is it's a relationship that's a work in progress, right? So last year there was some disconnect, right, between them in their personalities. Nick, we've seen, he's a very emotional guy. Jalen is a very private guy. They are different human beings, which is fine. That's okay. You don't all have to be the same, but you do have to be on the same page.
Were they not on the same page the entire year? Because I want to stop you, because that's what you just said is important to the conversation, because they started 10-1. Everything was all rosy. You never heard about their relationship. All of a sudden, they finished really, really bad. And so has the relationship always been like that? Did it start in the middle of the year? Like, what happened there?
Those 10 wins were a grind from what I was told. It was explained to me that just because they were getting W's, that doesn't mean that behind the scenes it was perfect and it was just this winning culture at all times. Every win felt like a really big feat for them because of the challenges that they were facing in terms of what they were doing on offense.
So from that, and if Russini's sources are correct, it sounds like the struggles with the Eagles offense last year may have kind of caused the relationship between the quarterback and head coach to become a little bit more challenged. I mean, she mentioned how the two have completely different personalities, which is completely okay, but the quote-unquote disconnect, as she described it, came as the season progressed, and each game felt like a grind, and potentially a lot of the offensive drives during the course of a game felt like a grind, and both just weren't always on the same page. And of course, there's also the whole dynamic with Hurts' close friend Brian Johnson, who was the offensive coordinator last year, and there's questions of how much of a say he had in the offense and how many of the plays he called. And from what Russini said, it sounds like Sirianni rather than Johnson was the one calling most of the shots.
Sirianni he's a conservative play caller, right? So you've got Brian Johnson last year, who's now with the Commanders. He was fired at the end of the season. He's in there to be the offensive coordinator. He had that great relationship with Jalen in the quarterback room the year they went to the Super Bowl. So they had that good dynamic. Then he becomes the OC last year. And it was Nick Sirianni's show.
100%.
It was all Nick.
Yep.
Play call, everything you saw on that field was Sirianni. And from just having a few discussions with people in Philadelphia, it just seems that Nick just wanted to do it his way. And he's the head coach. If that's what he wants to do.
Seems like it wore him down, though, throughout the year. Like, you can see his bags under his eyes. You can see everything. It's like too much for a head coach to call plays, I think.
The problem is they wanted a rinse and repeat, right? They wanted to just do what they did when they went to the Super Bowl. And as you know, every season's different. You have to evolve. You have to change. And I know that is what they're hoping to have here at the start of this season because they did make a lot of changes.
So I do agree with a lot of what Russini is saying. I mean, she's right in saying that the play calling was too conservative. She's right in saying that it seemed like they just wanted a rinse and repeat of the year they went to the Super Bowl, so they basically just used a more simple version of that offense. And she's also definitely right that that was for the most part Nick Sirianni's offense, and he had a ton of say in it. Now, where I would like to challenge that a bit though, and of course, I mean, I don't have sources like Diana Russini does, so I could definitely be way off here, but I just don't think that Sirianni was the one calling the plays, at least not all of them. I mean, I'm sure he had called some throughout the season at different times in various situations, and he also had a ton of input in a lot of the play calls, there is no doubt about that, but throughout the year, you could literally see Brian Johnson on the headset just calling plays in real time, and Sirianni also literally described the dynamic between him and OC Brian Johnson later last year, and it didn't sound like he was the one calling all the shots, as Nick said this about the play calling, quote, "Brian's doing a big chunk of it because I'm obviously managing the game," and then Nick went on to explain all the different communication that happens between him and Johnson during the game in fourth down situations and things like that, including saying that he himself will give Johnson input on what he's thinking a lot of the time and in various situations, before then saying, quote, "Obviously, we talk on the sideline in between series and what you're doing there, and you kind of go into a series and say, this is what we're thinking, and obviously we're talking through that just like we're talking through everything when we game plan and all those different things." And then finally, Sirianni also explained how there's communication between him and all the coaches on the sideline in different situations in terms of play calling, while also mentioning that it's tough because he, of course, being the head coach, also is doing the task of managing the game on the defensive side of the ball as well. So based on all that, it really does sound like the play calling on offense was just more of a joint effort. Now, Sirianni did have a ton of say in it. Yes, of course he did, but I don't think it was him calling all the shots like Russini pretty much said he was. But still, even if that isn't entirely true, this still could explain why there might be a little bit of disconnect right now between Hurts and Sirianni, because maybe Hurts didn't think it was fair that his buddy Brian Johnson got fired when Sirianni also had a huge hand in what was going on offense last year and the reason it underperformed. But at the end of the day, Johnson just didn't have a very successful resume as an offensive coordinator in his 1 year, while Sirianni does have an overall successful resume as a head coach. And owner Jeffrey Lurie has also made it clear in the past that when it comes to head coaches, he likes them to be more in the CEO type of role, and play calling and running the offense or defense just isn't as important to him from that position. So from the owner and just organization's perspective, the most logical thing to do seemed to be to change things up, come up with a new plan on how things were going to run during the season, and go from there. Hence firing the inexperienced and overmatched offensive coordinator Brian Johnson and hiring the more experienced and successful Kellen Moore to be the new OC, and also, more importantly, completely take over the offense, while Nick Sirianni then takes a step back from it and dives even deeper into that CEO role. And owner Jeffrey Lurie seems to have a lot of confidence in Nick Sirianni in that spot, as a recent article from the Inquirer details that a former Eagles executive said, quote, "Jeffrey thinks Nick is the real deal," although the article made it clear that the executive did not seem to agree with that notion. And then it also went on to explain how well-informed people around the NFL believe that Lurie thinks Sirianni has awesome potential if he takes a step back from the offense into more of a CEO type of role, before ending it off by saying, quote, "Lurie realizes that Sirianni stank at times last season, and he blames Nick as much as anyone for the humiliation, but he also believes that Sirianni is more than just salvageable. League sources said he thinks Sirianni is special." Now, take this whole article with a grain of salt because it was written by Marcus Hayes, who's been notorious for trying to stir up drama recently. However, just say that this is true, then that's certainly quite the endorsement for a head coach to get from their owner. But still, that hasn't stopped the odds makers from listing Nick Sirianni as one of the head coaches most likely to be fired after this season. So despite these comments from Lurie, there is no doubt in my mind that Sirianni is still under a ton of pressure to perform this year, because Lurie can hope these things and believe about Sirianni what he wants to, but if the results just aren't there, then Lurie may have no choice to move on from him, especially in a high pressure city like Philadelphia. But that being said, I think more likely than not, things are going to be very different for Nick Sirianni and the Philadelphia Eagles this season, as I think Nick thrives a lot more in that CEO role, as he has some very good qualities that lead him to being successful there. Plus, it should be a lot less stressful for him during the year with him taking that step back from the offense, and then with Kellen Moore stepping in as the OC and taking more charge of it. I mean, that not only takes pressure off Sirianni, but I also just love Kellen Moore as a play caller and an offensive mind, and not only will that take this Eagles offense to the next level this year in my opinion, but Sirianni also can learn a lot from him and take certain concepts and play calling strategies from Moore and develop in that area as well potentially. So all in all, I think the way that things played out this offseason in terms of Nick Sirianni's role with the team and the plan for how the offense is going to be run this year worked out great. and I think it could potentially save Sirianni and also save the Eagles from continuing to spiral like they did last year and instead bounce back in a big way this season. And someone who surely is going to only help Sirianni more in the rest of the offense is Saquon Barkley, who just seems so unbelievably motivated to have an incredible season with the Birds, as yet another workout video has come out of him in what is just one of a long list of many of those this offseason, and he looks to be just in great shape and just so motivated to have an amazing year. And not only is he drawing that motivation from the naysayers, as he said last week, but he also may be drawing it from how the whole situation with the Giants played out, with the public getting an inside look via Hard Knocks at how the New York front office, and specifically Giants GM Joe Schoen, didn't give Saquon an offer, told him to search the market for one, and then failed to even give him one final offer before he signed with the Eagles. And speaking of which, Saquon actually spoke to Diana Russini recently in an interview that's going to drop on Tuesday, but we did already get to hear a little bit of his side of the story in this clip.
It was over after that phone call, in my opinion.
As soon as he said to go hit the market,
I never in my heart truly believed that they were going to match it, or they only wanted me for a lower price. So like, no matter what, I probably wasn't going to go back.
So in all honesty, just hearing that and also watching how it all played out on Hard Knocks, you really can't blame Saquon for leaving, and now hopefully he can continue to play at a high level for a long time as a member of the Birds. And someone else who would like to stay an Eagle for a long time is safety Reed Blankenship, who made that clear in his press conference after signing his one-year extension in the spring. And now he's potentially going to have an opportunity to come out here in his third season and earn a more long-term extension. And I'm not going to lie, in the last few months, I think I've really talked myself back into fully actually believing in Reed Blankenship. And one thing that actually kind of convinced me even further was seeing this tweet from Jake Rabati, who said, quote, "Reed Blankenship was pretty good last year, and I've seen some people act as if he wasn't. Was he perfect? No, but he was seriously a good safety last season. His main issue is health." And that's definitely true. I mean, thinking back on it, Reed was really one of the only consistent players on the Eagles defense all year. He was one of the only guys that actually wanted to tackle somebody, and despite missing games, he led the Eagles in tackles for the entire season, and also, despite some struggles in man coverage at times, he was very good in zone with the best zone coverage grade on the team last year, and that's all in a poorly schemed and coached defense led by Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. So now that Vic Fangio is at the helm, Reed should be in a much better position to succeed, and I truly do expect him to have a great season if he can stay healthy. And I also don't want to understate the positive impact that Vic Fangio is really going to have on this defense, because a lot of this video has been spent talking about the offense and Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore and how the offense should be fixed this year and different, but the defense is in the same exact boat pretty much, because last year the defense was the team's biggest weakness and the coaching was the main reason for that. But now that an experienced and old school guy like Vic Fangio is at the helm instead of Sean Desai and Matt Patricia, things should be very much different, and just like the offense should be saved by the coaching shuffle, the defense should be saved as well. But what do you guys think? Just how good will Fangio and Moore be for this Eagles team this year? And also, what are your opinions on Nick Sirianni at this current moment just ahead of training camp? And now, just staying with the defense, we look at safety Sidney Brown, as we just got a big injury update on him heading into training camp, with him being placed on the PUP list, which stands for physically unable to perform. So we're not going to see Brown at the start of camp, and who knows when we will see him. But as I've talked about before, he does seem to be coming along nicely in his rehab, and I feel like his return could be sooner rather than later, which is just so exciting, because during his rookie season last year, Brown definitely flashed, making several very impressive plays throughout the season, and I just can't wait to see what kind of role he's able to carve out in Vic Fangio's defense in his second year in the league. Oh, and also lastly, just to end this off, I want to congratulate DeVonta Smith and Saquon Barkley for both making the NFL's top 100 team, with DeVonta Smith being listed at number 90 and Barkley being listed at number 86. And as the list continues to come out, I'm sure plenty more Eagles will be listed there as well. But now, moving on from all that, we all know the Eagles will report to training camp tomorrow, and I'm going to be covering all of it here on this channel. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you're notified instantly when one of these videos is uploaded. And also, while you're at it, make sure you drop a like to show some support. If you did enjoy this video, I really would greatly appreciate it, and it helps me out a ton. And also, leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. What are your thoughts on Nick Sirianni? The fan base seems to be kind of split on him right now, so you guys give me your thoughts down in the comments. And if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can check this one out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.